Welcome, and today we're here with Ingo Schweder, Josephine Leung, the principals from GOCO Hospitality, based in Bangkok, with offices in Berlin and also Western United States. They are one of the world's leading consultancies when it comes to spa, wellness and wellness resorts. Ingo is, a pioneer of the wellness industry, with his career both in operations and now in design and development and ownership. And Josephine joined GOCO a number of years ago as lead principal for design and architecture, post an illustrious career in China, both in architecture and interior design. Welcome, Ingo and Josephine.
Thank you, Emlyn. Good to be here.
Thank you, Emlyn.
Good to see you again. And also, just for the audience, I did work for a number of years with Ingo and Josephine in Bangkok, so let's make sure we get that straight away. And also, to be frank and say, all the skills that I worked and learned during that time at GOCO really have still been a great place to be supporting design and development in Accor for these years. So thank you very much for that for you both. We're doing a seminar today about design and development within wellness, and there's probably no better people to speak to than both of you. But Josephine, let's start with the very beginning. Can you describe your philosophy when it comes to creating a successful and lasting spa and wellness environment?
Thank you, Emlyn. I think, our design philosophy is always about, being authentic to the place and the locale where the project is. And the design really needs to speak to, the target market who we're targeting, and really to the materiality, some of the culture, aesthetics of the place. And really the key is to design the right guest journey, I would say, the overall adjacency of the spa or the wellness center. The guest journey is really important, where it's designed to align with the delivery of the services, to allow the guest to flow from one space to another very intuitively.
Mm-hmm. Is that your starting point, really looking at how a guest moves, how a guest flows, and what goes next to each other? Is that right?
Yeah, that's really where we start, and really looking from the sequencing of spaces from the more public areas, the arrival areas, to the most private spaces, to the treatment areas, and how the guests will flow through each of the flowing spaces in a very intuitive way and very seamlessly. Yeah.
Is there any examples, Josephine, there of things that, like the basic principles there, like mostly like active and passive? What are some of the sort of tips you can give to our team by getting adjacency right?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot to that, and we actually put a lot of focus on that. We often start with different options in the space planning, taking the best adjacency given, we're often confined within the spaces that we have. If it's in a luxury spa project within a hotel, usually, the building structures are there. We have kind of a box, and how we actually be innovative within that space. So really the design process, we often start with a series of different options to create the adjacency of the different spaces.
I think from a practicality, what we want to share with Emlyn's colleague is that there's the active and the passive, and in the active, there's the reception, and what you ideally want to do, you want to have your spa suites right up your reception, because they don't need to change, they don't need to go into anything, they want to be private, they don't want to be seen. So the spa suite should be very close to the reception, as close as it can get. But then there's also the entire grooming, the beauty, the manicures and the pedicures, because that is also partly only utilized for a certain guest at a certain 20-minute interval. They want to go in and out. And then also the fitness spaces, they don't need to go through the entire wet areas, but you need to allow them to go directly from the entrance into a fitness zone, mind and body, yoga, Pilates, whatever it may be. That should be all centered in the active zone on the front part. And then as deeper you go inside, as more intimate it gets, and as more cozy it gets, and as more private it gets, and as more the ambiance becomes, those transition spaces become very secluded, sophisticated, and private. They're cocooning. But in the more outer spaces, you're also very differently dressed, because you're dressed for an outside experience. But if you go deeper inside, you are much more private.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most vital points. There's that adjacency and privacy are probably the two critical points. And I think, Joe, if I remember, I mean, I know you're an active sketcher, right? And now I've been working in the corporate world. I don't see as much sketching being done. I think we move in a slightly different way and scale. But the one thing I wanted to say was that I think that the optionality of a space is probably key, where you're actually looking at 3 or 4 different options and maybe sketching that out in a rough bubble diagram and so on, which might seem to be the architectural interior design's job. But often within our design and development team, we have, wonderful experienced colleagues. I think the encouragement would be, let's look at optionality when it comes to a space, rather than sort of diving into to assumptive sort of elements. And I think that's maybe where with creativity comes from on your part.
Yes, because and oftentimes you come up with different type of options that can really emphasize, the unique selling point of the spa. So it's really, I think we truly believe in that. We still do that. I still try to sketch, if I can, different options. But right now we might be sketching on the computer versus a hand sketch with tracing paper. But still, that process is very important before diving into details of each of the spaces.
I think also, Emlyn, what is important is it's really the marketing and the business plan, because when you start designing, the architects and the interior designers, they need to get explained what the business plan is all about, because there are certain locations in one town. One is much more fitness oriented. It might not be a wellness space. It might be very much fitness oriented, beauty oriented, and there's a little treatment zone. Whereby in some other ones there's a huge water zone. In some other ones there's a huge, treatment zone. So not every spa is the same. And the business plan should guide the adjacency and the quantum of spaces being focused on a respective segment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely fundamental, is that initial pause in terms of what's the plan, what's the business, let's call it what's the concept. Yeah. It's more the business concept, right? I think that word concept gets mixed up a lot.
Yes.
Right. In terms of what that concept actually is. Looking at some fundamentals from the business perspective, which then generates the sort of scale you're looking at for that property. And then you're going into multiple optionalities to then get the best journey and the best thing. And I think that there's that expression, I think, where you measure 1,000 times and cut once, and maybe that's the lesson for our team, right? Is because we want to make sure that we're looking to measure a number of different things before we then commit. And once we commit, it's a lot easier a process. Yeah. I know that, materials and materiality within the spa is very specific, Joe, and you spend a lot of time working on that. What are some of the things we should be looking out for when it comes down to material selection, and how can we maintain this luxury, but at the same time maintain that practicality that the spa and wellness needs?
Yeah, I think in terms of the selection, materials, textures, I mean, that's definitely an important part of the spa design, where you add to this overall ambience. And Ingo was saying, this cocooning effect, making sure that the overall spa space is very intimate, very warm, very inviting. I think that's really the key to create that comfort and that human scale, right? But also sometimes we also cannot use too much materials, different type of materials and texture, because then it becomes too cluttered. Too much things going on is also not the right approach as well. So it's really having come down to a really concise selection of materials, and especially that these materials and textures need to be fit for the purposes, right? Oftentimes, one of the challenges that we have in a lot of challenges with the architects and interior designers are that they don't understand what type of material cannot go into certain type of spaces, and it will have future housekeeping issues, maintenance issues, and all that. So really, as part of the wellness design consultant, we really need to understand how that affects the future operations and housekeeping criteria, making sure that we are selecting materials for the right purposes.
So durability and long-lasting materials which don't need too much of a maintenance. I mean, I was recently I don't want to mention the company, but in a high-end luxury hotel, and there was major curtains in the swimming pool area, and they were beautiful silk, but I wonder how long they're going to last, because in a humid environment with silk beautiful curtains, it was an extremely palatial kind of environment, but that's going to last a year, and then it's going to get black spots. So one needs to be smart in the way one selects those materials in order to make sure they are commensurate with the needs of the physical spaces.
Yeah, I think that's vital. I think that we're seeing a lot of development. I think a lot of interior companies and bigger brands, your sort of HPAs and those sort of companies are much more used to designing spa and wellness than they were, say, a decade ago. And so what we're seeing, I think, from those selection materials is getting better, but there's still a tendency to maybe overlayer in certain areas, And I think that's probably the lesson for our team. And less is more, particularly in thermal areas, particularly in, maybe even relaxation areas where you're just looking for simplicity, the essence of the space and so on, rather than actually things being sort of overly ornate, and I think that the other point I'd probably say is, which maybe you agree or not, is, when you're looking at a design group coming in, maybe doing an entire property, one of the things I find is a little bit of too much similarity between the hotel design and the spa design, right? And I think we really got to be saying to those guys, look, the materiality selection and the design for that space has to reflect some elements of the hotel, but it has to be a distinct concept that really stands out from the rest of the property in the same way that food and beverage does. And I don't know whether you'd agree with that, you really got to try and drive that a little bit, no?
I think one of the things one can do with design companies, and HBA is a good example there, one can say, you guys are going to do the lobby in the restaurant. If you have them everywhere, then you say, but I want a different team within your team with whom I can give them a look and feel so that really represents the area, the modalities, the treatment concept. And then you have somebody else expressing it in their design style, and you get a different look, more commensurate with the need of your physical spaces.
Yeah, I think that's a great recommendation, Ingo, where you say, look, we're not going to go get a super designer, but we are going to get a separate group of people with a different eye to go and do that individual space. That's pretty practical. Ingo, you've obviously been leading the charge for wellness for a number of years now. What are you seeing now in terms of the key trends in spa and well-being? We have to think sort of 4 or 5 years ahead, be practical in the present, but also look to the future when we're making these concepts and ideas. What are some of the things that you're seeing has got legs, has got fundamentals that are going to be around for a long time? Yeah,
well, many people don't know what wellness is all about, and they really don't understand, why they should look after their health. I mean, that is sad, because we all know now if we don't look after our health, then we have a shorter lifespan and this and that. So what really came about during the pandemic, but also before already, was technology. And diagnostic modalities, data-driven results, data-driven who you are, what is your state of your health, is today very easy, accessible, even in a day spa in a luxury hotel. You don't have to go to a destination wellness resort. There's many high-end, it's not in a 3-4 star, it's more in a 4.5, 5-star, 5.5-star kind of environment done. But diagnostic modalities which are data-driven and give you a clear, identifiable state of health is something which is very much a trend which I don't think will go away. The second thing is that people are now much more focused and much more knowledgeable. This means you cannot just say, oh yeah, I give you a treatment, why, what is the benefit of this treatment? You have to truly explain people what they can get. What is there for me to spend $200 in Emlyn's spa in Paris? I want to know why I need to spend that money and what is the benefit for me. And if I have a good diagnostic modality incorporated through technology, this can be handheld devices, it can be portable devices, then you can give me a reading of that and can recommend something which is my benefit. And if you tell me when I come to a hotel, you give me time and you give me diagnostic results, I'm going to love you because you're going to help me to become a better person, a healthier person, a fitter person. So therefore, I think pampering, while still there and very important, if you give me more data and real results, I'm going to love you more and I'm going to be more loyal to your respective unit. And I think that's very important. And that will not go away, I believe. The second thing is that entire wellness facilities are fitness-centric. Entire wellness facilities are thermal-centric. You don't have to have everywhere everything. You can be very segmented and very concentrated on one respective box. Do that box very well, become known for that box, and do that excellently, and you will have a loyal customer base. Try to be the master of everything and don't do anything right, doesn't work. And people today, because they have much more utilized our facilities, they know exactly what they want.
This is a really important point, and I know it's one that you speak passionately about, is the idea of understanding a concept and being true to it, rather than being a smorgasbord of different pieces of wellness. Probably the same as food and beverage. You know, if you see a restaurant menu with German food, Austrian food, and Korean food, you're not going to be going to that restaurant. But if you know it's a fine dining French-based menu, then you know what you're going to be getting. You can focus on those skills, and that really applies to spa and well-being particularly, right? Let's just touch on thermal bathing. It's an area of your particular passion. You're also owners of an incredible bathing facility, Glen Ivy, in California. And you also have German heritage and background, Ingo, so it's part of your blood, right? And maybe mine as well. Why do you like the idea of bathing, thermal bathing, and that idea of guest journey? What does that do for you as a business and as a concept?
Well, there's a couple of things. Just from a pure business aspect, you need much less people to run a bathing facility or a hot spring resort facility like we have in California, because, you know, an employee goes into the treatment room, he or she is gone for an hour and a half. And the employee in a thermal area can pick up towels, can clean up certain areas, can direct the client, can communicate with the client, can tell him or her about the facilities and the benefits and so forth. So it is much less labor intensive, and that is in many markets very important, and therefore I like it. Second thing is really an hour in a thermal area can totally rejuvenate me and can really give me a great buzz and make me feel good. And that means I can shower, change, do 1 to 2 thermal experiences of 10, 15 minutes, relax a bit, go into the water, get out of there. That can all happen in an hour. And I feel like $100. And that is, or $1,000. Doesn't matter. So, and you feel automatically good about yourself. So again, it's a short time because we are time poor in our lives. So we want to do something which has a measurable benefit, which doesn't use too much labor cost for the operator to make a profit. And for the client, after an hour, I really feel different. So I like those kind of things. And then from a pure medical perspective, a hot and cold, that's tremendous to my body. Doesn't matter who I am, where I come from, what I eat, and which color I have. Hot and cold reduces my inflammation in my body. It reduces my sluggishness. It pours out of my pores all the dirt accumulated through environmental impacts and food and related, and really does the right thing for me. So I like thermal experience in principle very much, but I also hear, Emlyn, and I know we both agree to this, they need to be special. They cannot be just the typical whatever, the typical Finnish sauna and the typical steam sauna. There needs to be more.
Yeah, I mean, Josephine, I know you've been working on a number of those projects. From a design perspective, do you believe, let's say I'm leading question there, but from an architectural design perspective, are you able to create the wonder? I mean, are you able to create the magic when you're looking at thermal design in relation to other spas?
Yeah, I think you can, going back to technology, right? I think right now in a lot of projects that we're working on, we really trying to be innovative in these thermal experiences. And I think an integration of some technology is good in those areas in particular, because they can actually enhance the guest experience, right? Enhance that immersive experience. And some of these technology can also make it more therapeutic. So it's really, for example, incorporating some lighting effects, music, aromatherapy, really creating that special thermal offering could be a really good USP for the spa. So yes, we feel that each location, there's also a lot of the local bathing traditions that we can tap on. So a lot of that we use that as a story to create the experiences that we have for each one of the projects.
Let me give an example, Emlyn. Oh, sorry. Let me give an example. SBA, Salud by Accor, heads to the use of water. We all need to drink water. We are 80% water. We're going to create hotels where in the guest rooms, they have mineral water coming out of taps, alkaline water coming out of taps, pools which are made with alkaline water. So don't take chlorine water. Work with the water. Make the water acceptable for consumption. Tap into regional mineral springs which you have. that's not an expensive undertaking. We will soon do in one of our projects, which we just purchased in Thailand, we're going to create alkaline water pools. We're going to take mineralized water pools, which have a very particular purpose that doesn't cost much more than effort. But once you have done it, the guest will not swim in a chlorinated pool, because that's really, I mean, you go for health and then you have poison in the water to, so there's many other ways of doing that. And I think one needs to be a bit more creative, but also the architects and the designers, they need to become familiar. So one of the things I do, and I started doing this when I was in a corporate role, I took the general managers and the developers into experiences, into spas, and I explained this to them in order for them to have a first-hand understanding. Because sometimes I started designing because I asked them, who has been to a destination spa? Who's been to a thermal area? Oh, you want to design it, but you have never been. Okay, now let's make that move. Let's expose you. Let's show you to make sure you feel and sense. And once they have sensed it on their own, they can so much better interpret it.
Yeah, I think that's, well, Ingo, you interviewed me for Mandarin Oriental in the steam room, if I remember rightly.
Yes, correct.
Years ago.
On a yoga floor and in the steam room, exactly.
Let's be clear, right, about the actuality of that message, right? Nothing beats the experience, and I think you're absolutely 100% right. I think, Joe, you mentioned about the journey, the technology, the lighting, the ability to create drama, to create pause, to create heat and create light. I think it's a really fantastic area of development. I agree. I think that, bathing is a universal wellness language. It's something that every culture and country usually has, right? Even the United States, as you know, sure, Glen Ivy is based on, principles, ancient principles from that side. So we're excited about that too. Joe, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some passionate areas for you, I'm sure, about the importance of lighting in art and decoration, right? And how important is that to taking a spa experience from good to great, in your opinion? And what sort of things can we say to our team to help improve that process?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, the simple thing is you need to have the right consultants, the right lighting designers. And that's very important, that, to create that story, to create that lighting. Same as the, art and accessories, because many times, how many times we go into the spa, close to opening, and there's no art, no pictures, no accessories. All this is also part of the design process that really the team will need to think beforehand, right? So we really need like a special lighting designer. We need to think about the arts and accessories, all the decorative pieces that going to go on the shelves, really to create the entire experience. Because I remember we did the Frankfurt project, right? It was,
yes.
We went in, the spa was about to open and there's nothing on the shelves. So really,
and we went next door and bought the art. We were very innovative, Emlyn. Yeah, we remember that.
Yeah, so every single time we open the spas, we need to be really hands-on and really selecting these items. So might as well plan that early, incorporate that into the process of the design process, and making sure that we have a great product at the end.
Yeah, what's interesting is that if you design a restaurant without an art and decoration consultant, there'd be an outcry. But we seem to do it with spas. And I think that, again, there's probably two critical, I'd say, sub-consultants that we should absolutely insist on, which one is a thermal MEP specialist. We'll be speaking to Don Jenners a little bit later on about that. The second one is really that art and decoration piece, because for me, when you're putting the food on a plate in a restaurant, that is also the art, right? But really, the what you're seeing visually in a spa is the experience, right? Transition and all those different areas really are the spa experience, And if they're not layered, as many times we see, then I think we really miss a trick. And it's very hard to retrofit art and decoration compared to pre-planning it in the moments of pause. We'll be speaking to my colleague Tal from ArtLink soon, who's an absolutely passionate exponent of emotional wealth and well-being when it comes to art and decoration, to put some further tips on that. Ingo, Josephine, you've both been around the world experiencing spa and well-being, designing spa and well-being. Can you give me an idea of a memorable experience or a memorable project, one that really stands out to you that maybe influenced you or you're particularly proud of, Josephine, on the outcome? You can't say them all. You have to pick one, right?
I think I'll pick a recent one, which we completed. I think Capella Bangkok. The reason I really like that project is because is, I think, mostly is because of the team and the team effort throughout the design development process. We had a great interior designer that we work with locally, PIA in Bangkok, and we had numerous workshops. I think I have not seen an interior designer who was so passionate about how the spa would function at the end, right? So we literally have workshops, and we went to all the details in terms of how does the guest in the changing room pick up the Q-tips or the towels, where's the tissue box, So we went through all the different details in each of the spaces of the spa, allowing them to really the interior designer, the principal, really to design that all the way to the details. So I think that turns out to be a really, really great product because of that kind of detail design process. And also we had a great collaboration with the operator as well, which we were involved all the way to the end to even the pre-opening marketing efforts and all that. So it was a great collaboration with all the different team members, I think.
Ingo?
I think one thing briefly about Capella, I know it's not part of your stable, but we're creating entire storylines there for each one of their respective locations. We're doing 6-7 locations right now simultaneously. What we did in Capella Bangkok, because it's on the road where there's many embassies from many different parts of the world. Plus it's a spa which is directly on the waterfront in Bangkok. Where there is boats from all over the world. So the storyline was the trading stories of the embassies and the people who resided there. And we took the ingredients of the treatments. I don't talk about the oils. I talk about the ingredients of the culture, the essence of what is there from the locations of the respective embassies and the trades being there. So it's a multi-culti environment, which if you are at the Capella and you want to have a treatment there, you want to be in Thailand, but you also want to understand the surrounding. And that has been brought alive there. For me, Emlyn, quite frankly, it's the landmark in Hong Kong, because it was the first time that you have 4,500 square meters in an urban environment. You can run a membership there. You can run destination retreats there. You can have only a Pilates class, only a yoga class, and only a fitness class, which I think was very important. It was the first luxury hotel in Hong Kong. We started with bringing the biggest yoga teachers around the world. It was where Iyengar and Pratabi Joyce, the founders of Iyengar Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga, met again after 30 years and congratulated each other and got together. We had 108 people. We had 108 rooms. There are 108 people in the ballroom practicing yoga with those gurus. And they flew in from New York and everything. And we opened to a full packed house with a yoga class. That's very different than the champagne reception with canapes. And we had investment banker and everybody, and that created so much buzz. So I'm very proud of this project, even though it is now 20 years ago. It is still right now the highest grossing in Hong Kong. So we did something right.
Yeah, I think that unpack that a little bit with a number of experiences, but I think that it goes back to storyline. It goes back to taking a moment to consider. You can move very quickly once you've considered and agreed the storyline, right? I think also, Joe, this idea of workshop, and I know that my colleagues online, fundamentally want to be in a room with people in order to work through and understand the property, the hotel, understand the master plan, understand what goes where, and then drill into the detail of each restaurant, site, room, and so on. Naturally, we're a larger company and we get the chance to do that on a number of occasions. But, with the post-COVID landscape, much more is happening on Teams, much more is happening on sort of back and forth, right? I think maybe the message is, if we can, and I'm not trying to spend all our company's money, so we insist a bit more on that in-room process where you're in the room with the interior designer, in the room drilling down the detail. Because when you're getting your sketchbook out and overlaying your paper and looking at different things, that's when the creativity comes, and you solve a lot of problems, right? So it's a bit like you really front end the discussions to then make it much quicker down the line on, let's put it, block plan to concept design and so on, particularly in spa. And I think that we have to be very conscious in a larger company. A message for my team is not to sort of skim over the spa piece, right? In terms of its need. It's a very, very complicated product. It's a Swiss watch. It's not a Timex, right? And I like my Timexes too. But each of those pieces has to fit together really, really beautifully. if you consider that storyline, and if you're going into that detail, then it'll be good. I think the one that I'm really pleased I've had spent a small part, there was a number at GOCO and different locations too. One and only Mandarina, I had the chance to work on that, which I think has come out to be an exceptional project for exactly the reasons that you mentioned before, because the depth of detail down to what's the ear wax the holder going to be like, every piece of leatherware, every piece of amenity, every piece of was coming together with a real tactility, with a real understanding of from uniform to color coding to lighting. That creates the excellence. Right now, I think the further up the luxury scale we go towards, let's say, our Raffles and Orient Express brand, that's the level of layering that we're going to need in order to create exceptional projects. Just one last question, which is going to be really difficult for you to answer, all of us to answer. What's one of your favorite spas? I mean, Ingo's going to be like a long list, and you're only going to pick one, and Josephine yourself. What's one of your favorite parties we visited? It needs to be somebody else's or one of your own. I'll leave it to you. And what's the reason why?
Let me go first here. It's actually not a luxury spa, but the experience is luxury. Okay. It's a small little spa and thermal wellness scrub experience in Thailand called the Sanctuary Cove. Okay. No, it's Tamarind Cove. And what Tamarind they did is Tamarind Springs. Yes, yeah. Tamarind Springs. Joe and myself go there every time we're on the island. It is between big boulders. Natural mineral water comes down there, and you bathe between big boulders. You scrub yourself in your own scrub bar. You go into thermal experience, which are between 10, 15 meter high boulders wedged in between the water areas there. And why do I like it? Because it's a luxury experience, because it connects me to myself. It connects me to nature. It earths me. It roots me. And it is not overrun. There's not too many people there, so I can be by myself, reflect by myself. And then they have, in the hills, they have little treatment huts where older ladies give you very deep massages, and they play piano on your body. So it is not. It's a normal hut. It's nothing. It's not a chandelier from whatever Swarovski and marble floors. It's a bamboo hut. But it's clean and neat and orderly, and it costs also a healthy amount of money, but it is high-end luxury in terms of personalization, authentic experiences, real water, real nature, incredible healing treatments, and then after that, a little bite and a little healthy drink and juices. That I really like, and it's nothing of the mainstream, which we know, and therefore I believe we hoteliers should also look at much more unique, different experiences in order to bring that to our client, because then they come back.
Joe, you can't say the same one.
Yeah, I know. That's already the favorite one, I think. It's hard to say no. Well, and I guess a favorite spa that I worked on, I think I can still say is the Venice Spa. Actually, one of my first projects, right? One of the first GOCO projects in Venice. I really like that spa because it's a very unique proposition where you can arrive by a boat. It's very, very beautiful. It was wedged within kind of like historical Staples building. So it has that historical significance and designing a very clean, contemporary spa environment within this historical building. It was, what I also liked about it is it's very small. It's not huge, because sometimes a lot of the spas are oversized these days, I think. It's a very tight guest experience. You have limited amount of space, but that's where you create that really good guest journey. You use every single square meter of spaces, and it's all very, very clean, contemporary, has all the thermal experiences there, has all the treatment rooms, so everything within a very nice, concise way. Yeah, and it's on an island, so it's beautiful. And that's it's.
And Emlyn,
yeah.
And I need to tell you one. When you were running the operations, it made much more money than when we finished our contract and they took it over. It's a third less. What does it tell you? Work with specialists. Don't work with just some people who don't know. So they're making a third less money than when we were managing it and you were in charge of operations. So that's it's a kudos to you. That's fact.
That's just letting the guys know, it's the JW Marriott on Venice and Sacasasolo that we both worked on. It's got an incredible pool experience there, and Joe's right. It's very, very tight building, very challenging space for us to have worked with. But through that, you create innovation, right? You create results and outcome. The corridors are very narrow. We just stick the thermal areas into a little box that's facing another box. Particularly still love that indoor and outdoor pool. If I think about the idea of swimming in and swimming out into that small area of aquatonic and looking across over to the islands and seeing the Venice Sea, it's still a very, very memorable one. I think from a personal experience, it's interesting how we've all talked about bathing, right, and about the power of water and about the power of, simplicity and of nature combined together. I'm a real big fan of QC Terme in Mont Blanc, Chamonix.
Very good.
Which is 50 euro entry price. It's a 3,000 square meter bathing facility. It's 50 euro to go in. It's 800 people, but it has the most incredible view from the aquatonic pools of Mont Blanc. I'm a big fan of that. In terms of current Accor projects, there's a number. Obviously, I think I'm very, very pleased with the outcome from Raffles Old Hall office, which if you get a chance to go and see, I think you'd enjoy. It's a fantastic team effort, very similar experience you mentioned before. And I think that the lessons from that is it's the nature, it's simplicity to a certain degree, number one. Number two, it's a storytelling and narrative that is indicative of all those projects. Number three is the depth of detail you go into from the process in the beginning to allow you to move quickly at the end. And sometimes less is more when it comes down to both either scale, right, or in terms of the offering that you do. Be very, very hyper focused. I know you come from an operations and food and beverage background, Ingo, and for me, it's always a Michelin menu, right? It's 4-4-4 in terms of that, in order to create excellence, right? It's not 44, when it comes to this sort of things.
Less is more.
Less is more. Okay.
Yeah.
We're coming out of time. Ingo, Joe, we could talk a lot more. We'll probably hopefully try and do another one of these at some stage soon. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I look forward to speaking again soon.
Same here, Emlyn. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Emlyn.
Take the world.